I'm only a child and I don't have all the solutions. But I want you to realize neither do you. If you don't know how to fix it, please stop breaking it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Spark Animation Festival and our Meet the Filmmaker series. Our guest today is Simone Giampaolo, and he's an award-winning director based in London. He has directed and storyboarded and animated more than 10 animated shorts, some of which have been shown at international film festivals. However, last year saw him start a production which he considered his dream project. In fact, he went so far as to describe this project as hands down the most meaningful piece of animation I have ever had the privilege to work on. And that is his film, his latest film, Only a Child, which has just won the Best in Show award at the Spark Animation Film Festival. Welcome, Simone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone.
Congratulations on your win at the Spark Animation Festival.
Thank you. And thanks so much to all the judges for appreciating and liking our short film. It's so appreciated, and it means so much for me, but for the whole team of different artists which put their effort together to create it.
And it's such an important film. Let's talk about the foundation of it. What was the genesis of this film?
The speech of Severn Cully Suzuki became very popular and viral on YouTube around 2005, 2006, when YouTube started becoming, a very, very a thing, very popular around the world. So that speech, which was given in 1992, became again accessible to people. And then so I watched it. I watched it at that time when I was a teenager, and then I forgot about it. I hadn't watched it for many years, and I rediscovered it in 2018 when I was a bit down. I was feeling a bit depressed about the environmental crisis and all the different challenges that humanity is facing and will be facing in the next few years. So I found that speech again, and I realized that had never been adapted into an animated short. So I contacted Severn. I sent her an email, and she said, no, actually, lots of different things have been done with my speech, books, poetry, music. She said that lots of heavy metal bands have adapted her speech into songs, but no one has ever done an animated short out of it. So I really wanted to take this chance and, adapt it and make it visual and adapt her words to, take her words and make meaningful visuals out of it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So that's a good starting point because you have Severin Suzuki's speech, which provide the words, but now you have to do the visual development. When was it that, or how did you develop it? Because you end up with 20 different directors. How did you come to that end? I mean, it didn't start like that, I'm sure.
No. First of all, I wanted to receive her blessing. So once I got her blessing and her permission to use it, then I started cropping it and re-edited. So if you listen to the original speech, which is on YouTube, you can find it easily just typing the girl who silenced the world for 6 minutes. That's how it became very, very viral online. if you listen to this speech, it's a bit different. There are parts which have been trimmed, and there are parts which have been re-edited, you know, and reshuffled. So first of all, I recomposed the speech in an order which made, personally, it made sense for a narrative or a fil rouge, in a sense of visual narrative. And second, I trimmed it in different segments, and I started thinking of what segment could be done in what technique. So it was a lot of brainstorming, research, and thinking of how to visually describe this piece of the speech, this section of the speech with an animation technique. And the reason why I made my life very difficult, because since day one, I wanted this short to use almost every animation technique in the book, because animation techniques represent countries, represent tribes. You know, there is the tribe of CG, there is the tribe of stop motion, the one of 2D, and this film, I wanted it to represent all these communities coming together for delivering the message. So that's why I really, really insisted to get as many as possible, from paint on glass, sand animation, paper, cutouts, CGI. You know, you can find almost every technique in Only a Child.
Well, this is one of the great things I love, as you know, all the disparate mediums of animation are revealed here, and they all fit, they all work. So, how did you choose who would do what in those sections? Just because they had that was their strength, those individuals?
Uh, uh, there was a bit of a limitation, which made my life a bit easier when it came to looking for the right artist. This film was funded by the Swiss government and Swiss TV, and therefore I think 70–80% of the team had to be Swiss. So I started looking among, you know, the different artists that I knew in Switzerland. I'm originally from Switzerland, even if it doesn't look like it doesn't look like it, but I come from the Italian side of Switzerland, where everyone has got the accent, the same accent as I have. And I went through, all the different artists that live in Switzerland and work in Switzerland, and I made a first selection. And then there were a few particular exceptions that I had to take internationally. For example, our editor and post-production team was in London. Cesar Diaz was in Spain. He's the animation director who made the sand animation part. So there were a few other exceptions, but most of the people who worked on Only a Child are Swiss or are living and working in Switzerland.
Yeah. How did you come to work with the Swiss agency, AMCA, and their government as a producer? How did that come about?
I really wanted to create this film where I'm from. I never tried to make a short film in Switzerland, and I always knew I grew up and I went to university in the UK. I found my first job in the UK and I stayed here, but I never tried to create something at home in Switzerland. And asking, there are some very good funding programs and schemes in Switzerland for independent filmmakers. So after a few years, I thought, why not trying myself? I mean, I could access those fundings. I should try as well. So I got in touch with AMCA because AMCA is one of the only production houses in the Italian side of Switzerland. And I really wanted to have that project start from where I'm from, even though they didn't have any experience in animation. So they do live action, they do documentaries, but animation, this is their first short film. But we put together such a good development and pre-production dossier that everyone was enthusiastic about it, and the production company was really happy to help. The different investors, they They were really happy to support the film. We almost immediately got the fundings in a few months, which is quite rare for a short film. So I decided to go to AMCA because it was the production house where I'm from, and I wanted to try to create something at home for once. Yeah.
Well, and we don't think of Swiss as being, like you say, an animation powerhouse in the world compared to, say, America, Japan, France, and even England. But we do think of them as being that neutral country where they stand alone in the world. And when I look at this film, it really is representative of that Swiss mindset, that mentality, because this, like you said, with all these different mediums of animation that have come together, that international forms of animation that come together, it is very Swiss in like a United Nations assembly in a sense.
Yeah. Well, uh, when it comes to big productions such as TV series and feature films, of course, small countries such as Switzerland, they struggle a lot, uh, and they are really behind compared to other nations. But when it comes to independent films, or funding your own independent shorts, they have some very good programs. So it's actually easier, in my opinion, to fund your own short in Switzerland than in the UK, for example, because there is less competition as well. In Switzerland we are like 500 people in total, and and 1,000 cows. So the competition is smaller. But no, they are doing very good on the independent side, whereas big commercial productions, they are still a bit behind. They still struggle in Switzerland.
Right. Now, you have these 20 directors, you've handed them off a section, and now it's COVID. How do you manage everybody's time and their roles? I mean, tell us about a little bit about the logistics and the pipeline.
Yeah, it was very interesting working with so many different techniques, because some of them I never tried before. I did try stop motion and 2D, and of course CGI. That's my main focus, CGI, commercials and TV series. But I never tried so many techniques. So we had sort of to create pipelines and mini budgets for each independent director, which was very interesting and very challenging for our production line producer and production team. Um, Me being in London, I was doing Only a Child basically in my spare time in the evening and during weekends, while the artists were working mostly in Switzerland or in their house. So basically, we started doing everything remotely before it became a thing, before it became trendy in 2020. The plan was really for me to take some months off and travel and visit everyone in person, but the big bulk, the big chunk of the job was was mostly done remotely using Zoom, Slack, Skype. So we were really trying to do as much as possible in our spare time, and that was only possible for me while I was in London, while I was working full time at Jellyfish Pictures, and that means lunch breaks, evenings, and weekends.
Wow. Yeah, so that took a, it's amazing what you're able to fit in your spare time. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it was not an easy year, believe
no,
me, Keith. It's yeah, I underestimated it. I thought it was going to be easy because everyone was doing his or her own part, but I think I took too much that year. Don't do
like
that. Don't do a full-time job and a short film in your spare time. If you have a chance, take some months off, because otherwise it's yeah, your life becomes impossible.
yeah. Well, the message and the medium work so well together. It's just this great marriage of style and content, and it's really great. But we talked about Severin Suzuki's speech, which provides that foundation, the story. But tell us about um, filmmakers who have inspired you to do this kind of film. You've traditionally always just worked with Hollywood style or big budget films and such, Aardman and other studios. But what made you decide to do this apart from Severin's speech?
I think I think one of the reason is I worked for the past 7-8 years mostly in commercial departments, short films, and TV series in the UK. So I'm really accustomed now to the commercial pipelines of studios, and commercials, as you know, they don't leave much freedom when it comes to techniques. It's really, sometimes you have to follow some very strict rules or some very strict wishes from the client who has something in mind that they want you to copy something that they've seen already, and there is not much chance to create something fresh and new which people haven't seen before. So I think after a few years of sort of trying to mimic and trying to follow these trends, I decided to do something a bit more unique. So that's one of the main reasons. In terms of filmmakers, when I was at university at Bournemouth University on the south coast of England, I discovered Frederick Back and his short films. It's like this guy, he managed to win two Academy Awards making short films which were meaningful to him and to thousands of people, millions of people. So he became like a role model. It's like, if I can be, a fraction of what Frederick is, I will probably die a happy man, because he's inspired so many people doing, never really bending to someone else's style. He always kept his own style. He always kept his own meaningful topics in his films. And yeah, especially we were talking before about the man who planted trees.
Bit by bit, the villages have been rebuilt. People have come to settle from down in the plains where land is expensive. They have brought youth, life, and the spirit of adventure. On the roads, one meets people glowing with health, and boys and girls laughing as they enjoy their rustic pleasures. Counting those who lived here before, quite changed by their life in gentle surroundings, and including the newcomers, more than 10,000 people owe their happiness to Elzéar Bouffier. When I think that one man, one body, and one spirit was enough to turn a desert into the land of Canaan, I find after all that a man's destiny can be truly wonderful. But when I consider the passionate determination, the unfailing generosity of spirit it took to achieve this end, I'm filled with admiration for this old, unlearned peasant who was able to complete a task worthy of God.
That was probably the one film which really, really inspired me to create more environmental films. And I've always tried since my university years to create short films with meaning, create short films with a moral or a message at the end. And with some of them, I succeeded. Some other are a bit more maybe subtle, buried under comedy, but all of my films usually try or are attempt to teach something to the audience, or to raise awareness about an important theme.
Yeah, I think that's the great distinction with Frederick Bach and his films, like especially The Man Who Planted Trees, in that it doesn't just entertain, but it inspires. It motivates people to action. And In talking with, I mean, I love Frederick Back and his films. I talk about them all the time as well in my studies and classes. But first off, he was an environmentalist, and he had a profound respect for nature and a keen sense of humanity's responsibility toward nature. And that tells us why he did it. You know, it wasn't just because he was a great animator, but he had this moral sense to do it. And I get the same sense with your film, Only a Child, that the smallest actions make a big difference, that it shows the power of an individual. Each of us is a child. We're all a child, but what are we doing as an individual to make a change? And that's a really powerful thing, and very much in that same spirit of what Frederick Back was doing as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is what's so great about the Fridays for Future movement, for example, with young people marching and protesting around the world for climate justice, with Greta Thunberg becoming popular and famous around the world.
We will change! 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 We want change! We want change! We want change! Stop!
And Severn Kali Suzuki basically coming back. It's like a new generation of this environmental movement coming back. And of course, that's not art. That's not purely art, what I'm talking about, but this the power that one person or a bunch of artists have, that the amount of people they can reach, the depth of the message they can portray is very impressive to me. You know, even 20 people can make a message that can touch millions of people if it's done right. And that's why these young environmentalists are so important, I think. And that's why Severn was so important when she went to Rio de Janeiro for the United Nations Summit. As this power of the individual is very motivating for me. It's very, very inspiring.
But now what I love as well is that you've taken the power of her words and added the power of the visuals. And this is where I love the medium of animation, because now through that visual storytelling, you just add impact. You just plus her words. They give it just so much more power for us. And we get it. I mean, every time we were watching it this morning, and it's like so moving to watch. It's a very, very powerful film. So what is your hope for this film? It's 29 years since Severin gave that talk. Here we are in 2021. What is your hope with this film?
Well, this film was done really to try and reach as many people as possible. That was the goal, you know, to try and touch and move as many people as possible, so that more people would be, would take environmental change and climate change serious, and more people would act. And so far, I mean, there is that debate, between shall we reach more people putting the film online, or shall we wait? And next year, the film has had a very good festival run so far. The wonderful award that you gave us is a testament to that. It's like, it's going really well. So I think the idea is really to release it for the anniversary of Severn's speech. So next year in June, there will be the 30th anniversary for her speech. Since that day, she gave the speech in Rio de Janeiro. Therefore, I think we are going to release that. And the hope is really that we can touch and it can move as many people as possible around the globe. That's what I hope for. Yeah. And I just hope that, people could appreciate it and it can be screened. I really love when people contact us from schools, for example. They contact us like, oh, can we show it in our school program? We would like to screen it in a classroom. We would like to show it to kids, and that's really important to me. You know, I mean, no offense to festival. I love you guys. I love animation and film festival around the world, but knowing that you are sort of educating the next generation, or you're putting this message in front of lots of kids around the globe, it's you know, it's priceless. I love it when we manage to participate in some school programs, or the teachers ask us to play it in school. That really means a lot.
That's awesome. Well, I want to share with you just and paraphrase a little bit. In correspondence that I had, writing letters with Frederick Back about filmmaking and the current state of affairs in Hollywood, he replied and he said this, and I'm going to adapt. He said, the man who planted trees, but I'll say, only a child is an illustration of the power each of us has. If hands and minds come together, we can have an important beneficial effect on the earth. And I hope what he said is also true of your film as well. I want to thank you very much for joining us, Simone.
Thank you so much, Keith. Wow, you're so lucky you had a chance to know Frederick, you know, or you know, exchange letters with him. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.